Welcome to VPI Documentaries, a video series as part of the Federal Highway Administration's Everyday Counts virtual public involvement program. This video features Missoula Metropolitan Planning Organization's all-in-one tools.
I'm Aaron Wilson. I'm the City of Missoula's Infrastructure and Mobility Planning Manager. So we have mountains on all sides. We have two rivers flowing through Missoula and an interstate, and so that has created a fairly geographically constrained community, which means we've had to grow in some unique ways over the past decades. Part of that comes from just the nature of Missoula. It's a pretty flat valley. It's easy to get around. It's a small, compact enough city. But we also just have a history of lots of biking. Adventure cycling is located in Missoula. There's just been a history of sort of celebrating biking as a way to get around in our community. We also have we're a university town, and so that's one of our larger employers. It's one of our major drivers of transportation in our community. And so that is something that we really think a lot about when we're planning around growth and transportation in Missoula. Missoula is a fairly compact city, but then we have a lot of sort of outlying rural areas, and just wanting to get past that kind of typical participants in a public outreach campaign where you often see the same people coming to all of the meetings. So we started with some really basic things like doing online surveys, using our website, doing social media. We had started our long-range transportation plan update. Our first public meeting for that plan was about 2 weeks before the city of Missoula shut down for COVID, and so we had to very quickly pivot into using other tools. And so it really helped us having, sort of tiptoed into various online tools in that long-range plan to start using things like the all-in-one tools as a way to continue doing the plans and making sure that we're getting good public information from folks. We've used our website as a virtual open house where we take all the materials we might have during a live in-person event, and then we put all of that on the website so anyone that wasn't there or who wanted to go back and explore those materials could do so at the time that's convenient for them. The focus of this particular corridor study is to evaluate different design options for one of our primary downtown corridors in Missoula. It's Higgins Avenue. It's the center, the spine of our downtown. It's a very multimodal street. We have a new bridge that's under reconstruction right now, and that should be opening in the next couple of months. There was a lot going on, and we wanted people to be as engaged as possible in evaluating those different options. We use this website for Missoula called Engage Missoula, which is based on, I believe, Bang the Table. It's an online platform that allows you to create sort of a very interactive engagement, and people can sign up for notices and to stay engaged in the project. And so we started with just putting information out there, doing our typical social media, newsletters, outreach through the media to spread the word and get people to start coming to that website and knowing that that is the place to go to keep up with the project and get basic information. And then we went into the first phase of the project to identify sort of the opportunities and issues with the corridor. We used an interactive map that allowed people to go and put specific points or locations or issues that they were concerned with, and gave us that basis of information for designing the alternatives in a way that would do the most to address those issues. We also, as part of the alternatives, created this story map that was intended to be a very interactive experience to walk people through both what's happening on the corridor today, what some of the issues are, what our constraints are, and then walk through each of the alternatives in a way that really highlights the differences. So it really just opens up the ability for a lot more people to participate. And we've seen that in the number of comments that we receive. Or, for example, on the Higgins project, seeing the 1,000+ people engaging on the website is a lot more than we would see. If we had 1,000 people show up for an in-person public meeting, it would be the most successful event we've probably ever had. So it's really good to see that kind of participation and that there's more familiarity in the community with what we're doing. I think that's true of the university as well, that the virtual tools just create an opportunity to share that information if you're using those our existing networks and partnerships as effectively as we should be. As far as sort of quality control or just making sure that the information we're getting is representative of the community, we try to have a number of ways to do that. One is asking some basic demographic questions in our surveys so we can see sort of who is responding to those. Good example, on the Higgins project, we had categories for commuters, for business owners, for people who are just going to the corridor for errands or entertainment, sort of shopping, those kinds of activities. And then we can look at the distribution of our responses based on those different categories, so we know sort of how do those viewpoints differ, and does that match with people that we've had conversations with in other types of meetings. In most projects, we have used online map tools, whether it's the long-range transportation plan or a more specific corridor study. We've found them to be very useful for, one, getting people to think about the full scope of the project. So instead of just asking someone a question about either a corridor or asking someone what they think about transportation in Missoula, you can give them a map that shows the whole community. You can put various information in there that you want people to be aware of. So we may put in, on a long-range plan, we may show a map of all of our bike facilities and then ask questions about, where do people have issues, where are there gaps that we really should fill in, and you can start to focus people's comments. We've also tried to use mapping, the sort of online mapping tools to involve people in the actual data collection and planning process. So we did a sidewalk inventory a couple of years ago where we used ARC Collector, and we used some online mapping and people's own cell phones and tablets so that they could go out and actually collect the data for us on sidewalk location, condition, missing gaps, ADA ramps, all of that. And so we were able to use that tool to update a full urban area-wide sidewalk inventory over the course of a summer. So trying to keep things well-designed, simple, and clear, and using the appropriate tools to the planning process that you have. I think also not relying solely on virtual public involvement, that there are a lot of good ways to talk to people and gather information and sort of allow you to look at what you're collecting virtually versus in person and make those connections and see what the differences are, or where you have similarities in the information. And obviously you can't anticipate every aspect of a process. You have to have some flexibility, but being really thoughtful early on about what's appropriate for in-person, what can you do virtually, what tools do you want to use, and how do you design those to really maximize your engagement on a project.